was a failure. Join the conversation by commenting live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten, being true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state when that light turns red. So don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.
That's right. Welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian, and we're ready for 5 more fantastic chapters here on episode 31. And Dennis, I can tell you that while we're not going to be talking a whole lot about the Lakers and Trailblazers today, that series went down the drain quickly.
Yeah, you know what? Nothing like having to play on 824, in the Black Mamba jerseys. Man, they never had a chance. I wish I had a major wager. I guess I could have laid 30.
Yeah, that was.
I turned it off when the Lakers were up 38.
Well,
37.
It was crazy because they were the second best team in the play-in tournament, only behind the Suns, who didn't make it. And then they beat the Grizzlies. They beat the Lakers in the first game, and it looked like the Trailblazers would be a very tough out and they'd win that series. But then the Lakers just snapped their fingers and said, hey, we realize the Trailblazers don't play any defense inside. And by the way, let's bust up Damian Lillard's finger. And by the way, in Game 4, let's give him some more bad luck with a messed up knee. And there's no reason to watch Game 5. I mean, I know it's not going to happen, but they could have a Vegas line of plus or minus 25 or 30.
Yeah, the Blazers still had a good year. They did a nice job in the bubble. Dame's a superstar, but yeah, I mean the Lakers, they look like a championship team last night. That's for sure. I know we're going to get to a little NBA coming up.
That's right. As a matter of fact, before we take we'll get to that in today's book, but definitely want to thank everybody out there who's watching via YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. Also those listening via the podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And if you're watching right now, wondering when you can get a copy of this via the podcast, you can get that just before midnight on the day of each show. You can also like, subscribe, and participate in each show by sending in your feedback via YouTube, via Facebook Live, and via Twitch. Dennis will be checking that and reading your feedback throughout today's show. First, though, let's take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, the Lions canceled practice over the shooting of Jacob Blake. We'll show you what they did as opposed to practicing today. In the third chapter, we were just talking about the NBA, but one of the big stories over the last 7 or 8 years has been the Philadelphia 76ers process, and that led to them getting swept and firing their coach. So is tanking a failed philosophy? In the fourth chapter, the tanking Tigers are trudging forward. They're up 2-0 right now, but they've lost 10 out of 12. And in the fifth chapter, it's game time. I believe for the first time ever, 2 weeks ago, I lost in Dennis's trivia, so I'll try to eat a W like Jameis Winston this time. But we start off with the first chapter, and that takes us to the same old Lions. We'll get to their training camp practice, as we mentioned in the second chapter, but let's start off with an overall look at the team. ESPN put out its most recent NFL power rankings earlier today, and they also, in the power rankings, I like this aspect. They like to have a little feature to go along with each power ranking, and this week's feature was who's on the hot seat. So it could be a quarterback, could be an offensive lineman, could be a defensive back who, if he doesn't perform well this particular year, could be out. And obviously, when you think of hot seats, you always think of head coaches and general managers. So when it comes to the Lions and where they would fall in the initial power rankings, as usual, you have to start from the bottom. So here is the list from ESPN.com. And as you can see at the bottom, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 32. Who's at 31? The Washington football team is at 31. And look, already in the hot seat, Dwayne Haskins, their second-year quarterback. 30 is the Cincinnati Bengals. Where are the Lions? They're in the top 29. The Giants are 29. The Panthers are 28. Uh-oh, look at these slappies. The Jets are 27. The Dolphins are 26. The Lions are a top 25 team, but just barely. The 25th team in the NFL, according to the NFL or the ESPN NFL Power Rankings, and they have, no surprise, Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia on the hot seat. Why is the seat warm? Who else would it be, right? Ownership called a special meeting with beat writers to explain the decision-making process behind keeping Patricia and Quinn last December, with the understanding there had to be improvement after 9 total wins in 2 seasons. Quinn and Patricia understand what's expected of them even in this season hampered by COVID-19, and if they aren't better than in 2018 or 19, it would be very tough for new owner Sheila Ford Hamp to decide to keep the duo for 2021. Dennis, there you have it. ESPN is projecting a same old Lions season and saying that if it is, those on the hot seat, Quinn and Patricia, could be out. Do you agree with both?
Well, I think that's what should happen. You know, if you just base it on the last 2 years, it's like they say, hey, we really showed some improvement. I actually think they're going to do what would be very SOL, would be very ironic, because when Bob Quinn showed Jim Caldwell the door, he said 9-7 wasn't good enough. I think they are going to go 9-7 this year, and I think that will be good enough for both of these guys to stay around and maybe even get contract extensions. So that's how funny things work. That's how funny things are with the Detroit Lions. 9-7 wasn't good enough for Jim Caldwell, but it'll be good enough for Bob Quinn and also Matt Patricia. But, you know, they're having the expanded playoffs this year. So the whole thing about being in playoff contention, you could really have 5 or 6 wins down to the last couple weeks and make an argument that you're in playoff contention. You really could. Now, I don't know what, you know, Sheila Ford Hamp, you know, if she's looking through all that and worried about parsing her statements or anything else, but you'll be able to know by looking at this team and how they play on the field whether or not they should be out or not. Maybe can you make a case that, you know, they could come back being 7-9, even if they really showed a lot of progress in some areas and lost some really tough games? You know, maybe, but I would think that they would at least have to go 500 for the Fords, Sheila this time, to consider bringing them back. But it looks pretty shady when if you bring them back, even, you know, they go 8, 9, and 7. You're like, wait a second, let's get Jim Caldwell on the phone. But, you know, I don't think they're going to win 10 games. But I happen to think they're going to be a little bit better than most this year.
So obviously you're not on par with them being number 25 in the NFL, but I think, Champ, going into the season, especially nationally, looking at the Lions, you look at the rest of the NFC North, I think they're better than the Bears, but I wouldn't put them in front of the Vikings or the Packers. And so when you're going through the rest of the teams there, I think ultimately, you know, they can be better than the 25th team, but heading into the season, I can completely understand why people would be really down on them. Yeah, and you were talking a minute ago about if they had 5 or 6 wins going into the last few games. Think about how embarrassing it would be if Sheila Ford Hamp says, hey, we were 5-8, and we were right on the edge of that playoff picture that ESPN likes to put up on the side during the middle of games. And if we had run the table and we had had a couple of tiebreakers go our way, we would have made the playoffs. But we went 5-11 because Matt Stafford broke his back again. And because of that broken back excuse, and because we were in December on the side, meaning just on the outside looking in at this expanded playoff, we're going to bring Quinn and Patricia back. I think that would be embarrassing. And I think it's already embarrassing when the Bob Quinn standard is you have to win more than 9 games because 9 games get you fired. And his new coach, his BFF, wins 9 total games in the first 2 years, and he decides that's definitely good enough to bring him back. It was also interesting a few weeks ago to see that Jim Caldwell was on a podcast, and he said that he could tell right away when he first met Bob Quinn that Quinn wanted to fire him, but ultimately didn't. Look, I think they're going to have a same old Lions season. I think the 25th is fair. I think an SOL ranking is fair. I don't even need to go into any detail about Quinn and Patricia because I thought that they should have been fired after last year going 3-12-1. This is a team that doesn't have great talent. They have a terrible coach. They have a broke-back quarterback. They have a new defensive coordinator. They've had no offseason to work on his new system. And they're going to have 2 new offensive linemen where they haven't had an offseason to work on the system. So there's not much of a reason to think that they're going to get anywhere close to 9 wins. Now, you want to talk about improving from last year? If Stafford stays healthy, they'll have better quarterback play, and that would make sense. But I don't trust Matt Stafford's back. I correctly predicted that Stafford would bust up his back again last year, and I was wrong by 1 game. I said 4-11-1. They were 3-12-1. I'm not going to be surprised if he busts up his back again, particularly with 2 new offensive linemen. So there's just no reason to trust the Lions at this point. And then you take away the preseason games where they could work on some things. No, I don't have any reason to disagree with the Lions at 25. I don't have any reason to disagree with Quinn and Patricia on the hot seat. This makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I think the one thing about Stafford, I know we say this every year, it kind of feels like it's do or die. This is going to be it. It sort of feels like that again this year. I feel like, last year coming back, I was worried about the back, but, he took those big hits in the first 2 games and showed that he was over that. We should know pretty early, when he gets lit up, if he's going to be okay. I am concerned about that right side of the offensive line, but I like the skill players here, man. I really like the running backs, and I like the wideouts, and I think Stafford can get these wide receivers the ball. Hawkinson has to take a step up. I think this is a playoff offense. Now, the defense, Matt Patricia, it's like, wow, man, that's the thing that's scary, very scary. This is a guy who looks like he's zigging with the rest of the league is zagging by not getting pressure on the quarterback and dropping guys back. I mean, I'm not feeling that. He's got another year where he's got his guys. He had a lot of injuries like Hand and Daniels. I know those are excuses. There are also some reasons there. Hopefully, they can stay healthy up front and they can somehow get some pressure with the 3-4 guys that they'll have that'll be rushing the QB and trying to get that pressure up the middle, which looked good in the first couple games, so everything went south. But
well, when you're not a deep team and you have injuries, then you should expect a big drop-off. And when you add to that poor coaching, you should expect a drop-off. And when you consider the fact that they have not had preseason games, they've had an unconventional off-season, I think you can expect more injuries this year during the season than in other seasons. Obviously, fewer injuries leading up to the season because there aren't any preseason games. But if the Lions, or if there are more injuries during the regular season than in a typical year, because the training camp and the whole preparation for the season just lends itself to more injuries, the Lions are going to be one of the teams that's hurt most. They are devoid of elite talent and great talent, and they're shallow. So I don't see how. I get liking the offense or thinking it could be okay, but in terms of playoff offense, I mean, they've got one very good to great offensive player in Kenny Galladay, and a good receiver in Jones. Is Amendola going to have a solid season this year? You're hoping for a step up from Hawkinson. I think that he'll take a step up, but he's also coming back from an injury. Who knows what you're going to get out of the number 2 tight end. Can't trust Kerryon Johnson to stay healthy. They should have an upgraded running back with DeAndre Swift, but he's not going to have the same quality offensive line that he had at Georgia. There's obviously more questions on the defensive line or defensive side of the football than the offensive side of the football, but I still don't trust the offense, and I still don't trust the third best quarterback in the division in Matt Stafford over certainly Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like they're going to win the NFC North or even make the playoffs. I just think they're going to be a little bit better than most people, which is going to have them around 500. I'm going to go for a game above. It's not like I'm sitting here pounding the table and saying, look, man, these guys are awesome. But the one thing I think, if you look at baseball with the injuries that they've had, an inordinate amount, and whether it's because they rush things through to ramp up to get the short season going, or it's been The COVID, the guys did take a break. I think you can expect some of that in the NFL. But the one thing maybe that the Lions have going for them there is that they've got the second most cap money. And while I was saying, hey, go out and sign Jadeveon Clowney, maybe go out and look at a big-time safety like Earl Thomas that's disgruntled, that maybe you could get involved with giving him the minimum or something like that. But maybe just stick around and wait and keep that money in your back pocket, because if there are a bunch of injuries like that, maybe you'll be able to fill them up with the amount of cap space that you have. So maybe they've got something going for themselves there.
Yeah, I was about to jump all over you for that, but the fact of the matter is that while players don't come to Detroit because they want to win or because they know they're going to get good coaching, if they're going to get some money, then they'll come to Detroit. And if Detroit is offering an extra $1.5 million over the next closest bidder, and the Lions are overpaying by $1.5 million, then they'll take that in this kind of weird year.
That's right. Well, we got a lot of feedback coming in on the Lions, as you might expect. Joe G's ready to get in on the process. That's coming up. DJ is quoting some of your Patricia lines here. Tim Cole said the Lions are always going to be the same old Lions. It's the Lions. Mm-hmm. Bring back Fonts. I still have nothing but respect for him. I lost you there, Tim, with the respect for Fonts. Here is some of the live chat coming in on YouTube. Keith, I can pretty much guess what he's going to say. It's something about Tua, but let's look. Of course it's going to be SOL. They are not winning 9 games. My guess is they will win 6 to 8, but could be worse. If Stafford gets hurt again, stupid to sign a backup quarterback so quickly. They should have waited. Here's somebody saying they should have signed Kaepernick.
There's still a chance to do so. There's still a chance.
Here's a 6-10 prediction. Stafford gets hurt in the first 2 games. Offensive line is a mix from last year. Maybe he meant to say a mess. There isn't a really good offensive lineman in the bunch. There's one that says the defense is still bottom third of the league, maybe worse. They should sign Clowney for a year or 2. They do have the money. Yes, they do have the money for Clowney. And Greg coming back at Keats and says, I agree, defense will be down, and they need to sign Clowney. Well, the one thing, and that gets back to whether you want to keep it safe, keep that money if there's a spate of injuries there, or if you're going for it and throwing that money at Clowney for a 1-year deal. And the one thing about Clowney is, he's a gigantic name. He's a guy that can get off the edge there. Does he fit this?
He's got history against players from Michigan.
What, you mean lighting up the running back?
Yeah, from that bowl game.
Yeah, hey, he's a presence on the edge. It doesn't feel like a Lions signing, going out and getting Clowney. What it feels like is the Lions will, wait a few games and then when other teams are looking to move on from a contract, then they jump in and grab somebody like they did with Snacks. I
could easily see Jadeveon Clowney coming to Detroit and just flat out dogging it, because he's been labeled, he's been given that label in the past as someone who doesn't give his best effort all the time and dogging it. And if nobody else wants to sign him, and then the Lions sign him, and he's only going to be here for 1 year, on one hand, you could say it's a contract year for him, but on the other hand, I could definitely see him just coming here, dogging it for a year, taking $8-10 million, and then bolting for a place that actually has a chance to win. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Dennis, and obviously everybody out there who's watching and listening as well, is do you miss the preseason? Because I found it harder to get excited about the start of the season without the preseason. Obviously, we've got the baseball season, which is about halfway done, and we've got the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs, which we typically don't have right now. That's taking away our attention from football. But right now, we would be 2 days away from the dress rehearsal for the Detroit Lions if we didn't have coronavirus, and that dress rehearsal would be the Lions against the Dolphins. It would be Tua versus Okuda. We'd be talking during our shows about what happened in the first 2 games and what to make in of the final 2 games. How much do you take out of the preseason and how much do you not? I am missing preseason football right now.
Yeah, I don't miss making an observation of the preseason and somebody telling me nothing matters about the preseason, and then except you watch the Lions, and 2 years ago they were such a disaster under Patricia. Those first few games, everybody knew that the preseason actually did matter that year. You know what? I always looked at the preseason like like a real nice meal. They aren't the main course. They aren't even the hors d'oeuvres, but are they a little bit of even like a nice bread that comes to? No, they're not even that. But maybe like a little cracker. But you're hungry, you even though you get all this nice stuff coming, you still grab a cracker and maybe eat a little butter with it because that's what you do. That's what the preseason's about. You take the first quarter, maybe you take 2 quarters, and it's nice to see the personnel out there, how the guys look at their new uniforms, those kind of things. But when I was younger, man, I used to pay tons of attention and watch them all the way through. We used to get together with our friends, my friends, and man, we'd have parties watching the preseason. But that kind of
preseason party?
We used to do it, man.
Wow.
I think we just like get together and party.
Yeah, I mean, look,
we wouldn't be doing that in the COVID era.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I wouldn't do that, but I just think. Like, when it comes to the NBA and the NHL, even though people don't watch their preseasons very much, at the very least, you can read some stories about what transpired in the games from the beat writers and know what's going on to get yourself juiced up. In baseball, you got spring training games, and people watch that. People were even watching the intra-squad streamed summer camp games, and now with the NFL, it's just, hey, here's the season. Like, you don't get to see anything, so I am missing that.
Oh. Back when the Lions had Drew Stanton, he would come in. I would go to I used to go to, I don't know, a handful of practices, and you'd go out to practice and you'd see like, you make your observations. You don't have to be a scout or, an NFL type to look out. You're like, man, who's that? You see Kelvin Johnson standing a helmet above all the wide receivers and running past guys and making these great catches. Like, that guy's really good. But then you'd watch Drew Stanton drop back to pass, and he'd be throwing these wounded ducks, and you'd say, "Man, Stanton doesn't look good." But you'd watch him in the preseason, man. He'd just get the ball, make plays, run around, lead them back. Stanton was the ultimate gamer, not a practice guy. Just get him under center. Preseason, he'll lead you back, and then everybody's like, "Man, let's play Stanton over Stafford." I missed that a little bit,
yeah.
It's
fun to talk about.
I missed the text coming in. It'd always be like, play Stanton, Jim, and Farmington. It'd always be from guys from Farmington that played with Stanton. They all loved him. But the one thing I don't miss about text after preseason is the text. They just start rolling in. If you see one, you really do see about 12 a night where it's like, remember, 2008, the Lions went 4-0.
And then went 0-16.
Hashtag preseason champs. And it's like, all right, I remember.
Well, now the Lions can't even get a preseason championship, so they're not going to win anything. All right, let's turn the page to the second chapter.
Yeah, well, the Lions, we stay with the Lions, and we go to their practice from today. They had a practice, but they canceled it after a team meeting. They decided that football wasn't important today. They went out in front of the Allen Park training facility, and they addressed the media because of the Jacob Blake shooting in Wisconsin. The Lions canceling practice. What did you make of the Lions unifying and going out in front of Allen Park and standing as one?
Well, and we've got some video that I can show in just a second about what the Lions decided to do as opposed to go out on the field and practice and get ready for their first game. But I think it's first appropriate to show everyone what led to this point. This is not just something where the Lions decided, hey, we're going to be lazy or we want to go out there and make some kind of weak statement. They saw the video that went viral about what happened with Jacob Blake, and they were moved to do something. So I do want to warn everybody out there that this video is disturbing. And the video we're going to show you is not perhaps what you've seen in the media where they stop it and pause it and allow you to hear the gunshots. This is the full video, and there is some graphic video as well as some graphic language that you're going to hear. But here is what transpired earlier this week that led to Jacob Blake getting hospitalized and paralyzed from the neck down, or from the waist down right now. Oops. Go back up.
Wow.
And it's really tough to see that, because this just watching that video, there didn't seem to be any big threat. And especially when you see afterwards, or you hear afterwards, that Jacob Blake did not have a weapon. He was an unarmed black man, which seems to happen time and time again. When you watch that video and you see the other angle that was shown as well, where the police had him down, then they allowed him to get up. There's 4 officers. They allow him to walk around the car and open his door, and then only when he opens his door does a police officer shoot, not just once to stun him and stop him, but 7 times. To see him walk around that car slowly and casually, so that if they wanted to, the police had plenty of opportunities to tase him. There was lots of reports about how the police had tasers to tase him, to subdue him. When you see that they had the opportunity, if they didn't want to tase him, to tackle him 4-on-1. And instead, they decide, with him leaning into his car, with his back to him, to shoot him not just once, not just twice, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. It's hard not to get moved by that. And I give a lot of credit to Matt Patricia for what he did. This is a guy who, by all accounts, doesn't have a lot of respect, or at least didn't have a lot of respect in the locker room. When players leave, particularly defensive players, they trash him. Darius Lay said that he didn't really care about him as a man, and you can go look up what he said about what Matt Patricia said about him a couple of years ago. But I give Matt Patricia credit, because he didn't start practice by saying, hey, times are tough, coronavirus, Jacob Blake shot, but we got football to focus on. We got to get ready for the game. He, according to the players, said, look, I want to give you guys the opportunity to talk about what's going on. And they went on for hours about how they felt about this shooting by the police in Kenosha, Wisconsin, at Jacob Blake, 7 times with his back turned. And then afterwards, he decided that it was a good idea to cancel practice, because their minds were not on football. And I give Patricia a lot of credit for that. This is a guy who's certainly had issues with the locker room, and I think that he built up a lot of rapport. I thought it was also striking to see that there's 32 teams in the NFL, 32. And only one, your Detroit Lions, decided that today was not a good day to take a day, or not a good day to move forward with business as usual. They decided to take the day off to protest. So kudos to the Detroit Lions. Kudos to Matt Patricia after a very difficult video that I'm sure they all watched.
Yeah, well, what stood out to me, there were a bunch of different quotes, but Taylor Decker, said he came in and when they were in the meeting room, he said he saw the pain on his teammates' faces, and he had a lot of empathy for them, and that reminded me of what our conversation was, ours, you and me, and as a country when and after George Floyd, we had weeks of conversation about turning a corner and what can we do, and let's keep this top of mind. And we did for a couple weeks, and then it seemed to kind of fade away. It's whenever you see these videos, I saw the video that you showed, I saw another one from around the other side there, and it's what we do. Like we talk about, we put on our white coats and we act like we're scientists talking about coronavirus. Now we're Monday morning quarterbacking these tapes and seeing like what's going on, how much of the information do we really know. And I don't know, like you try to give both sides here. As a police officer going in, did they know that this was a violent criminal that had a history with firearms? Maybe they did know that. When they got him on the ground, did they feel like what happened with him wriggling out and then being able to walk around? What were they saying to him as he got to the car? What was he saying? Like, I got a firearm in here. Like, those are things, like all of that I think that we can talk about and wonder, like, okay, but the 2 points here that you made about a
then yeah, they'll cancel the game or they'll boycott the game. They'll push it back a day to let everyone know this is serious. This is not just about decorating a court and decorating some jerseys. I would be very interested to see if there are others around the NBA that feel like that. Just like I'm interested to see if perhaps tomorrow there are other teams that do what the Lions did and take a day off of practice to protest.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that. I would predict that. I think that one thing that when it comes down to basketball, I remember when Kyrie Irving was like, I don't even think we should be there. And then people were like, yeah, you already have your money. And no, we want to go. But there was a point that he was making there. A lot of people shrugged it off because, Kyrie Irving says weird things like the earth is flat, stuff like that. But I was listening to George Hill, the Bucks guard, after the game last night, and he wasn't having anything of talking about the game. And he sounded a lot like Kyrie Irving. Like, he's like, I don't even know why we're here. I don't even know what we're doing. He just sounded exasperated and a little bit despondent about it. And, you could, even though he had a mask on, you could feel that pain, through his face. And there's a lot of things when people have been talking about the NBA ratings and when I'm reading about that, sometimes I feel like they're throwaway lines, but they're like, yeah, there's a lot of people that don't really like the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's like, wow, they're one of the reasons given for the NBA's decline in ratings is that they've had the sayings on the back, and that they've actually put Black Lives Matter on the court, that it's turned people off. And you do see it online, like even today with the Lions, and I don't believe the people that are posting like, well, I'm not going to watch a game because of this, and it's the same thing about taking a knee. But there are people that were upset that the Lions were out there. Get back into practice. This is why I'm not watching the NFL. I just want my games. But it's just one of those
wait till
things.
week 1. You're going to be on your couch.
Oh yeah, there'll be people watching the games.
No question about that.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn the page to the 3rd chapter. And in the 3rd chapter, that takes us to the NBA. And it takes us to a team that, they've been rebuilding for years. And a lot of Pistons fans have been saying, we want to rebuild just like them. And it's the Philadelphia 76ers. They have termed their rebuild the process. And I think that about a year or two ago, most people felt like their process had been pretty much complete outside of getting to the NBA Finals. But their process was a lot of tanking, like a no-limit soldier. Master P was thrilled with what what the Sixers were doing, and Master P is actually a big basketball fan and thought about becoming an NBA player. But they tanked to get guys like Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and also guys like Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor. The plan was to get a bunch of young stars on the team and then in a few years be a title contender. They started in the 2013-14 season when they had a 19-63 record, and they drafted Nerlens Noel, and then later on in the offseason hired Brett Brown to be the coach. And that was 7 years ago. This year, it culminated in them having the 6th best record, not in the NBA, but in the East. And then when they got to the playoffs, they did so without Ben Simmons, but they couldn't even win a game against the Sixers or against the Celtics. And they ended up firing Brett Brown after getting swept. And people are wondering if the process by the Sixers is a failure and the general philosophy of tanking just doesn't work. Dennis, what do you think?
Well, I think one is that Joel Embiid needs to get his head on straight and needs to be in better shape and needs to be a lot more focused in if he wants to be at times. He's got the game that he could be a superstar and he could put a team on his back, but he didn't seem like he was that much interested in doing it in this situation in the first round. And Ben Simmons is a pretty good player. I remember put Markelle Fultz in there too that the Sixers moved up and got, and ended up being a bust, although he looks like he's turned the corner a little bit, except with his 3-point shots.
They got rid of him too early.
Yeah, well, I mean, his game, like you saw the jump shot, like from him. Mm-hmm. But I look at Brad Stevens, the head coach of the Celtics, and Brown. Those guys were both hired 7 years ago at the same time. And you look at the Celtics and Danny Ainge, they just had one GM. And you look at the moves and the trades, like, Rozier, they end up getting Kemba Walker and signing him. You look at Tatum. where Celtics and the Sixers ironically make that move for Fultz and move up and give him draft picks, and the Celtics, pick Tatum. Even if you're in the process, you have to make the right picks when you're up there. And the thing about the Sixers is, Okafor was a bust, Fultz was a bust. You already mentioned Nerlens Noel. And the other thing is that Browns had 4 different general managers over the time where, the Celtics have just had Danny Ainge. So he deserved to get fired. But if you're asking me if I think like the Pistons over the next 2 or 3 years should follow the Sixers blueprint here and stay in the bottom 5 rather than, going out, maybe signing a guy like Van Vliet, throwing a bunch of money at him, and then, trying to see if you can just make the playoffs at an 8-7 seed. No, I'd rather be in the bottom 5 for the next couple of years. And remember, if the NBA, if they allow, which they have talked about, high school players to go right into the league as early as 2021, that's where the temporary Spartan is, Amani Bates.
Yep.
You would have a double draft because you would have the guys that were freshmen in college that would come out, plus you would have the high school players. That would be a hell of a year to be in the bottom 5, and that's only 2 years away. I think that the Pistons, that would be my recommendation. And Troy Weaver, their new general manager, when you're a general manager and you're new, you're going to get a year or 2 as a honeymoon. I would think they've got 2 years left for Blake Griffin. I think rather than going out, I would use that money, and I would look to, just get draft picks and take somebody's bloated salary, which, teams will be looking to dump that over the next 2 years. That would be my plan. I would do a little process for 2 years to that double draft, rather than, what are you telling me that the Pistons are going to try to, be a top 4 team in the East? I don't see that happening.
No, and when you look at the Sixers process, I believe it was last year, they were a top 4 team in the East. So I don't think you can look at their process and say it was a complete failure, because they did get themselves home court in the first round. I think they won a playoff series. So, I mean, winning a playoff.
They were that damn close to beating the Raptors. Remember that with Kawhi Leonard?
That's right. They had a shot. They got close. This year certainly was a big disappointment, because I think they were 31-4 at home and 12-26 on the road, and obviously they didn't have any home games inside the bubble. They didn't have any road games, but didn't have any home games. But you're right, it does come down to the decision-making process and selecting the right players. Simmons and Embiid, you could make the case were good picks if you're going to be tanking, if you're going to be doing a process. But those were not the only first-round picks. You mentioned Nerlens Noel, who was a bust. You mentioned Jahlil Okafor was a bust. You think that Markelle Fultz is a bust. I think they got rid of him too early. I think that he's going to be he's already a pretty good player for the Orlando Magic. But here are some of the other first-round picks that they drafted. Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. Who the heck is that? I don't even think he's ever played an NBA game. And also Furkan Korkmaz. That was a first-round pick. A later first-round pick, bought a first-round pick, and then they drafted Dario Saric, who is a decent little player for the Phoenix Suns now. But out of all that tanking, they got Simmons and Embiid. That's not making a good use of all your tanking. If the Pistons are going to tank, they got to get a better. I mean, you don't want to get yourself the next Stanley Johnson who's riding on the Toronto Raptors bench. You want to get yourself guys that are going to contribute and become stars. You want to get yourself the next Luka Doncic. You want to get another Embiid, stuff like that. And then on top of that, I was looking at some of what they did in the playoffs this year. Pusha T would be proud of them, because they were bricklayers and ball shorts. They were worst out of all playoff teams with a 39.6 field goal percentage. If you know, you know. They were also dead last in three-point percentage at 26.4%. If you know, you know. They were 19th in the regular season in three-pointers made per game in a three-point shooting league. If you know, you know. And right now, you know that the roster they put together had some talent with Embiid, Simmons, with Harris, throwing way too much money at Al Horford. But the decision-making process didn't work. And Brett Brown was not a great coach. I think it's clear that he was not a top 5, top 10, maybe not even a top 15 coach in the NBA.
Yeah, and the only defense that you could have that I would know is that their best player in Ben Simmons wasn't available for the series, and that was
But you can't win a game. The Orlando Magic can win a game against the Bucks. The Portland Trailblazers can win a
that's
game
on
against the
Joel
Lakers.
Embiid. That's on Joel Embiid. I would deal Joel Embiid, and that's it's too bad the Pistons you'd wonder if they could even come up. I was trying to think, would they have the firepower to go after him? And it's one of those things you look, wow, you want to bring a guy who doesn't look interested in Philly, bring him in Detroit and, keep him here by yourself. There will be a team that'll make a run at him, hoping they can motivate him and a change of scenery because he can be one of the top 5 players in the league, but you got to get him motivated and you got to get him to buy in.
Yeah, I think that the moral of the Philadelphia 76ers story, first of all, I would say that I wouldn't consider tanking or the process to be a failure, but their process, I would give it about a C or a C+. But decision-making is more important than just flat-out losing games because you can get yourself a top 5 pick, but if you draft Darko Milicic, then that pick is not going to work out. If you draft Anthony Bennett number 1 overall like the Cavs did, then that pick is not going to work out. On the other hand, you could be 15th. You could have the number 15 pick and draft Giannis Antetokounmpo. You could be just outside the top 10 and draft Donovan Mitchell. So decision-making makes sense. You could have a second-round pick and get yourself Draymond Green.
Chris Middleton.
Chris Middleton. He was a second-round pick from the Pistons, and now he's the second-best player for the Bucks. So decision-making, along with tanking, is a great process to have. But the best process is just making the best choices.
Yeah, we could just sit here, and if the Pistons didn't trade and give away Chris Middleton and Spencer Dinwiddie, and they would have made the right pick instead of taking Luke Kennard and made the right pick for Donovan Mitchell, I mean, we could be sitting here, and with the additions they could have made after that, they would be one of the top 4 teams in the East. Just 3 moves, and all 3 of them, you're not like, oh, that's crazy. It wouldn't have been crazy to hang on to Chris Middleton. It would have been crazy to hang on to Spencer Dinwiddie. And it wouldn't have been crazy to draft Donovan Mitchell. 3 moves they could have made that they'd be sitting here and it would all be different.
And SVG drafted Dinwiddie because that was his first draft pick. It was a second-round pick. He didn't have a first-round pick that year. And then he barely played him. Now, he was coming off of a knee injury that he suffered, I believe, at Colorado or whatever he played college. But he had it for a couple years after that, and he still just didn't play him. So, yeah, some of that does fall on Stan Van Gundy. We got some feedback, or you want to turn the page?
We got some feedback. Tim says NBA players have zero respect for their coaches unless they do exactly what the players want. The coach is just a mouthpiece for the players anymore. Look at Beeline. I think I spelled his name wrong. Yeah, that's all right. Beeline's a tough name to say. And let's see. Greg says, he's talking about football and the preseason. So we will turn the page.
All right, and that takes us to the 4th chapter.
And that gets us to the Detroit Tigers, who are still leading. It's at the 6th inning, the last time I checked, just a minute or 2 ago. They were still up 2-0 on the Chicago Cubs. But the big thing here is after the 9-game losing streak ended, and somehow they were able to take 2 out of 3 against the Indians, you had Casey Mize, his home debut. And it was yesterday in the 1st inning, man. He looked magical. But then came the 2nd inning, and he just didn't have it. And the guys behind him were kicking it around as well. That didn't go very well. And so you have the Tigers who have the lead tonight, but 11-16. And the interest, which was once going like this, is now certainly looking like that. Or if you want to put it like for people that are listening, I'm waving my hand. They can be, I think the interest is waning a little bit. What do you think of Mize, and what do you think of the interest of the Tigers right now?
Well, at least they're not the Angels. I mean, Angels spending all that money.
Great manager. They got a great manager.
Yeah, they do, but they can't pitch, and they're 9-22 with the best player in baseball. They're just wasting his career away. But look, Casey Mize's home debut was not good. I mean, I'm not going to say it wasn't as bad as the numbers suggest, because the numbers show 3 1/3 innings pitched, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. I forget how many hits that he gave up. He wasn't as nasty, especially after the first inning. He didn't have the same command that he had in his major league debut. But I pointed my bony finger of blame for that Tigers loss yesterday, not at Casey Mize, not at Tyler Alexander, but at that infield defense. You got Willie Castro with a throwing error. You got Jamer Candelario running in front of Jonathan Scope when Scope is standing right in front of the ball ready to scoop it up, and then they can't get an out at first base or second base. You got... and those were the two errors, but there were also misplays by the defense. A ground ball, I think it was when Tyler Alexander was in the game, a ground ball goes right underneath his legs, and it was a hot shot, so you can't really blame him for not fielding his position there. But Nico Goodrum's like right behind second base, and he can't field the ball when he just had to move over 2 steps. And I think Jack Morris was saying, well, maybe he was obstructed by the view. BS! Field your position. It was hit basically right at you. There was another play that was hit either at Goodrum or Castro that should have been made right up the middle. The defense didn't give Mize really a great shot to compete. He gave up the home run, which was obviously a hard hit ball. He had one other hard hit ball, but the rest were soft, line drives or grounders and things like that, and they couldn't field their position. This is just how bad the Tigers are right now. We're sitting here in this rebuild. You got a promising rookie who's struggling a little bit. If you got a decent major league infield behind him, they can pick him up. But the problem is they got a guy at first base who should be playing third base and wasn't all that great at third base. You got a guy in Willie Castro at third base making a throwing error. You got Isaac Paredes, who has been playing third base, who has been making throwing errors. You got Nico Goodrum, and everybody on FSD is always talking about, oh, look how great Goodrum is. He doesn't have any range. Nobody has great range. It's the infield defense is a disaster right now. That's what I took out of yesterday's game.
Candelario's better at third than he is at first. He doesn't look comfortable at first, but he's pretty good over at third. But you do have to field your position, and it's the one thing about the Indians and their success of the last few years, man. They really, the Dickerson's always talking about defensive info solutions and just how they rate, runs saved, and they're always up there. They also defend the 90 feet. They don't give up the extra 90 feet. And the Tigers do give up the extra 90 feet. That's one thing. And you just can't move guys around. And I know that, Gardenhire would say, what do you want me to do? We don't really have any other. You got to try to find some consistency. The moving the guys around the batting order and shuffling them around the infield, it's never going to work. You got to pick a spot and leave them there for a while. You only get a couple chances to move guys around, and the Crone injury killed him. But it's just one of those things where they look more like a minor league team moving guys all around than a major league team where you have a solidified lineup. And the other thing, when your relievers are throwing more innings than the starters, that's not good. And the Tigers starters have the highest ERA for pitchers in all of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and the defense doesn't help them out.
No, that's a really. You say bad combinations; those are all really bad combinations.
And you want to talk about giving up the extra 90 feet? Let's move to the outfield. Christian Stewart, whose arm is so weak it looks like he's throwing with the wrong arm. Anytime it's a fly ball to him, everybody's tagging up and advancing because he gets nothing on his throws. So it's painful
and he took a bad
watching
route.
him.
He took a bad route on the. On a ball on a double last night as well. So he's not a plus outfielder, that's for sure.
He's not Castellanos, but you're right. He's not a plus outfield. He's not dropping balls like we saw Castellanos do when the Reds came to Detroit. But nobody else in Major League Baseball wants him in their outfield. And think about this as we go back to the infield defense. It could get worse if the Tigers trade away Jonathan Scope in the next week. The trade deadline is the 31st. Which is Monday. If the Tigers get something for Jonathan Scope, then it would make sense to trade him away because he only has a 1-year deal. It'd be a 1-year rental for someone. We know that Alavila can't make good deals, but are they going to bring Dawel Lugo back up to play second base? I mean, are they going to put one of the Castros at second base? It's going to be even worse.
Yeah, well, it didn't work out last year with all the guys that hell the field got. He thought he would flip. They all got hurt. This year they all got hurt as well. I mean, Cameron Maben, I don't know how many times he's been in the lineup, but he was one of those guys in a one-year deal that you could have looked to flip. Crone would have been the same thing. Yeah, Scope's the only one. The only one. And Zimmerman in the last year of the contract. But
yeah, addition by subtraction. And then obviously the other prospect that the Tigers have brought up was Tarek Skubal. He made his second start on Sunday. Wasn't great. High pitch count, 2 1/3 innings. Gave up a home run to the leadoff batter for the second consecutive game. He did have 5 strikeouts, but I mean, obviously you're giving up runs. You got a high pitch count. You can't get out of the third inning. Yes, Daniel Norris pitched well, but you don't want your relief pitcher pitching more innings than your starters. Something that you brought up just a moment ago.
No, you're right about that. So, but they do have the lead tonight. Early back, still 2-0. Here comes another run for them. How about that? Should have been out at the plate. Make it 3-0 Tigers.
All right. We want to get some feedback or get to the major wager.
Let's get to the major wager. That's my department.
Yeah, you've been killing it with the major wager. What do you have on tap for us tonight?
Well, overall, I'm plus 150. I did start the season making 4 wagers on some futures with the Tigers and the Orioles being over the 20 and 21. So, and then it was under for the Dodgers and Yankees. So who knows? That's going to come down probably to the final week, and that's going to affect my bottom line. If I got to above 200, I could just sit back and I would, what do you say, be playing with house money at that point. But I'm plus 150, and I'm still going to gamble. And I'm going to look for some value tonight. This is what happens when you start looking at those basketball lines, and I start picking. You know what? I wish I would have gone with the Lakers. Being on 824, playing with those Black Mamba jerseys. That thing felt like a win all along against the Blazers. Of course, that would have been a great bet, especially when they were up 37. You already been cashing the money. But I'm going to look to a hockey game, and I'm going to play the value. Even though I think the Vegas Knights are going to beat the Vancouver Canucks ultimately in the series, and Vegas is up 1-0, plus 200 is too good for me to pass up for the Canucks tonight. So I'm putting 25 down at Vancouver. Yeah,
wow.
Plus 200. Yeah,
that's a pretty big underdog.
Minus 210 if you want to take Vegas. I mean, I like Vegas, but when they're telling you can get plus 200, they're going to sweep them. I'm gonna take the Canucks tonight. Just putting 25 down it to win 50. I'll go for it though. I'm going to go for Vancouver.
That's good value. As for me, my major wagers have been struggling lately, both on the show and on Twitter. Yesterday I picked the Rockets to cover, and they lost again. Today I decided, you know what? Let me just go with the easy pick. I'll take the Cubs at minus 1.5 at plus 110. Turnbull's pitching. Chatwood had been okay, even though he was coming back from an injury. The schedule's tougher. The Tigers got bombed yesterday. The 10-12 losses going into the game, and I just figured, you know what? Let me just take the easy money, and it's 3-0 right now. Look, the Tigers can obviously blow it. The Cubs have an offense with a lot of talent in it, with Baez, with Rizzo, with Hayward, all these different star players that can go. I mean, they could go out there. We're in the bottom of the 6th right now. Top of the 6th inning, top of the 7th, they could go out and put 7 runs on the board. So I'm not completely rattled by this yet, but I am a little bit concerned that the Tigers are going to make me another loser in the major wager. But that's what I picked before the game, and I'm sticking with it.
All right. Well, that gets us to trivia time. You ready to go?
That's right. It is game time. Time for the 5th chapter.
Yeah, and for that, I went to the Detroit Lions roster, and I am going to give you a name of a Detroit Lion, a current Detroit Lion, and you're going to tell me what college he attended. Pretty easy stuff, right?
Oh, boy. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. I'll try my best. I think I can do this. I just have to be 3 out of 5. So if you give me an easy one like Matt Stafford, I think I can get that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you Matt Stafford. That would be an easy one for you.
Okay.
First one, I'm going to go to the wide receiving core, and I am going to ask you what college Danny Amendola went
to. Shoot. I know he I don't remember him playing in college, so he wasn't a star at a big program. Oh, man. If he was in the Big Ten, I would have remembered. I think it was a no-name, dumpy school. Abilene Christian. That's my final answer.
Was that in Texas? That would have been a good guess. Texas Tech.
Texas Tech?
Danny Amendola 0 for 1. Correct.
Jeez. Okay.
We go to another wide receiver. This time a rookie.
Oh, I know this.
Cephas.
This is easy. Wisconsin. On Wisconsin.
Correct. 1 for 2. I'm going to go to the other side of the ball.
Okay.
Big name, big contract. Trey Flowers. What college did he go to? Big Trey.
Trey Flowers. I don't think he went to a Big Ten. I don't know where he went to college.
Well, you got like a 1 in 100, chance.
Yeah, 1 in 125. I don't think he went to Alabama. I would have remembered that. Let me go with UCLA. I know that's wrong.
That is incorrect. He went to Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
Arkansas.
I would have never gotten that. So I have to get the next two right to win.
Yep,
I'm in
that's
trouble.
right. We're going to go to the tight end position. Jesse James.
Oh, I know this one. We are Penn State. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, you should have got that one. I would have been. I was ready to jump on you if you didn't know that one. Yes, Jesse James went to Penn State, so it's all coming down to this one, and we're going to
cornerback Amani Oruwariye.
No, we're not going with Oruwariye, who dropped a couple picks against Michigan State. That one game I was watching him, wondering like, man, that guy isn't going to make it in the pros. I am going to go back to the wide receiving core. I'm going to ask you what college Marv Jones Jr. went to. Marv Jones Jr.
I had a feeling you were going to ask him about him. Where did he go to college? I know he wasn't a Big Ten guy. I know he did not go to Penn State, so you can get that mug down. I want to say SEC, but I have no clue. I have not. He's been in the league for like 7 or 8 years.
Doesn't sound good. Does not sound good. Does not sound like you know what you're doing.
No, I don't.
You sound like you're in trouble.
I'm gonna lose. Okay, this is definitely wrong. Let's go with Tennessee.
No, Marv Jones Jr. went to California Bears.
Yeah, that was a poor showing by me. I got the 2 Big Ten guys, but that's it.
Yeah, nice job on that. I would have been on you if you didn't get Jesse James. All right, well, we want to thank everybody for watching and listening to the show. Coming up on Thursday, how interested are we in the upcoming college football season with no Big Ten teams being included? We'll talk about that coming up on the show on Thursday. Have a great night.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait, he represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast, or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter.